Welcome back, explorers. I'm David, that's Wesley, and this is the Trailcast.
The show that gets so far off track, you'll have to stick around to see just where we end up.
Excuse me, barmaid. I'm afraid you brought me the wrong offspring. I ordered an extra large boy with beefy arms, extra guts and glory on the side. This is a talking fish bone.
That's right. Today, we're talking about How to Train Your Dragon. So, David, today we are talking about How to Train Your Dragon. I know it's one of your favorite movies. What do you think of How to Train Your Dragon?
Now, you're thinking about this, Sorrel. It's not what you look like. It's what's inside that he can't stand. Sorry, I just had to finish up my quote from earlier. But yeah, no, How to Train Your Dragon is one of my absolute favorite movies. Like I think I actually mentioned this last week on the podcast. I grew up watching that movie, and it's just like when I was like 8, 9, 10, it was probably my favorite movie at the time because it came out like right when I was like right in that perfect age range for it. So
Yeah, I remember watching it, and like, obviously I liked it. Like, it's a good movie, but like, not long after, I also remember just how obsessed with the movie you became. Like, you were like really, really into it, and like, then the second is, and you went and watched those like as soon as you could, and like this, that, the other things. You had your own opinions on all of this stuff, and I was like, yeah, it was good,
So
you were definitely into it.
For me, like it was my Lord of the Rings before Lord of the Rings was my Lord of the Rings, if that makes sense. Like you know me now, you know how obsessed I am with Lord of the Rings. How to Train Your Dragon was my Lord of the Rings before,
Yeah.
Because I knew a lot of the lore. I'm not gonna say, well, probably most of the lore. I'm not gonna say I knew everything, but I knew a lot of it. And yeah, it was one of my favorite, like I said, favorite movies at the time. Now, I actually watched it today. Actually, I don't know if you watched it or not in preparation for this, but
Watched it night or two did go. Me and Sarah watched it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't recently watched it. What's your opinion of it? Does it still hold up? Is it still a good movie? What's your opinion?
Yeah, no, it definitely still holds up. It's a pretty good story. Not like anything too complex, obviously, but it's a pretty good story. Animation still looks good, and I mean, there's a lot of things that can be taken out of the movie, like principles and meanings and stuff like that. But down to it, like, it's a solid movie that still holds up today. If I hope we're just talking about the first one, because while I have seen the other two, it has been a long time, and I've only seen them a couple times. So the lore, I'm leaving up to you to disclose.
So yeah, I mainly want to just talk about the first one, just because I like the second two, but the first one is a lot. Well, I'm not gonna say better. I like the first one a lot more.
Probably a lot more nostalgic being the first one, being the first one you saw. So I guess, David, then the question is for you: is in your mind, does it hold up, being that you haven't seen it as in probably such a long time, since maybe you're a little bit younger?
Yes, it still definitely holds up. One thing that I will say for the well, yes, it is a kids movie, so it doesn't have as complex of plot points as some movies that I like now. But
Mm-hmm.
I would put the score in How to Train Your Dragon up against just about anything. Like the soundtrack is
I
amazing.
mentioned that to Sarah last night or Sunday night. I think we watched it. I said, if nothing else, this score is amazing.
Yes, John Powell. John Powell.
Recently.
Sorry, go ahead. Okay, well,
I was gonna say, recent.
Gotta stop doing this.
I'm gonna shut up.
Okay, fine. I'll say so. I'll finish my thought, and then you can finish your thought. But no, all I was gonna say was
yes.
All I was gonna say was like John Powell really outdid it on that score. Like that's like Lord of the Rings level of like soundtrack. Like it's honestly, I think it's better than like the Marvel movie score, which that's pretty good. Star Wars is up there too. Like with Lord of the Rings and this, but it's it's up there with some of these like amazing soundtracks.
The Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh yes, definitely.
I love the Pirates of the Caribbean score. But what I was gonna say was, so recently, with my work, I've been listening to a lot more things like podcasts and music. Well, I've also been listening to a lot more scores and orchestras, because you listen to the same songs or even a lot of songs, but you listen to people sing, and it sometimes gets a little boring. So one of the ones that I like, the movies that I play in rotation are Pirates of the Caribbean, the soundtrack for that, some soundtrack for Lord of the Rings, soundtrack for Star Wars, and then the soundtrack for How to Train Your Dragon. Now that one I didn't go out of my way to find. It just came up one day, and I was just like, "Dang, this is good! It sounds familiar." And I looked at it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is How to Train Your Dragon score."
Mm.
But yeah, it is definitely up there with some of the best.
Yeah, I actually have several of the tracks from the first one in my main Spotify playlist. I have a Test Drive, which is the main theme, and then was it Romantic Flight and Forbidden Friendship are also really good.
Yeah,
the tracks, but like it also there's a bunch of like symbolism behind it too. Like I'm not really a professional at breaking down movies and stuff, but
not yet.
Not yet, yeah. But one thing that the themes that it portrays, the soundtrack portrays are just like you can listen to the soundtrack, and if you've watched the movie, like exactly what's going on. It just like also the way they use different instruments to portray different feelings and emotions too. Like so the first okay, so there's several music themes that repeat throughout the soundtrack, and depending on the different instruments, it like gives it a different feeling. So like the first time, so like Test Drive is the like main theme that plays whenever like Toothless is around. But the first time that you hear that theme is when Hiccup cuts Toothless loose, but it's with the bagpipes, and you get that like almost like wild unknown feeling with it.
Yeah,
but it's that same progression of notes and stuff. So but it's with the different instruments, and it just makes it sound very different. But yeah, like I said, the themes in the soundtrack are just amazing.
Well, hey, part of a great movie is a great soundtrack.
Yes,
like
for sure.
You can't, and it's because of the fact that in movies the soundtrack tells its own story. Sometimes tells its own story, and sometimes just like helps push that story even more. Like you're saying, with having certain elements making you feel certain ways, or even like sometimes I find it really cool when you find that music like foreshadows sometimes what's gonna happen. You know,
Mm.
like in some like I think there's certain times in Star Wars where certain tunes are kind of played just a slight bit different, but it's basically the same tune, and like it hints like like might be playing when Anakin is doing something,
Yeah,
and you're like, oh, it's hints towards him being Vader, so something like that,
yeah. I was about to say, I think there's several times in the prequels when Anakin does something, and you can faintly hear the Imperial March in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like stuff like that, and like music is such an instrumental part, pun intended, for you know for movies and stuff like that.
Well, it's just like, last week we talked about the Phantom Menace, and we mentioned Duel of the Fates, and I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the things that gives that duel makes that such a good duel is the soundtrack behind it, because the Duel of the Fates theme is probably one of the most, other than the Imperial March, is probably the most recognizable theme from Star Wars.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
no disagreement there.
the soundtrack can make or break a movie, and I think that's
Mm-hmm. Hey, the reason Pirates of the Caribbean I think did so well after well, just did so well in general. They have an amazing soundtrack.
yes, you get that like almost like Celtic sea shanty esque
Mm-hmm.
soundtrack. Yeah. Which you get some of that in How to Train Your Dragon too. Now one thing that I realized too that I kind of think is funny is another soundtrack that I actually really like is Skyrim's soundtrack. And I know you haven't played Skyrim, but one thing I find kind of funny is I realized this today. I like Skyrim
Mm-hmm.
soundtrack too, but Skyrim is also about Vikings who kill dragons.
You got
Kind
a
of.
thing going for you, David.
Kind of. Of course, it's in fictional world. It's not which How to Train a Dragon technically is, but it's based in the real world. It's still supposed to be like North Atlantic. Anyway,
Yeah,
but
it's supposed to be based in the real world, whereas
yeah.
I guess they don't have like mystical creatures as in like I know Skyrim has like elves and other different creatures like or humanoid beings like that, as opposed to like the fact of dragons,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's different than like elves. So
Mm-hmm. That's another thing I want to talk about too. So, dragons.
mm-hmm.
How to Train a Dragon is probably one of the it's kind of interesting the way in fiction there are several different archetypes for dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the other big franchises that I like that have dragons typically use one of the other archetypes other than How to Train a Dragon. So generally the three major archetypes. I guess you could have others, but the three that are most commonly used are the Western Beast, the Western Thinker, and the Eastern Thinker.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the difference is the Eastern Thinker is kind of self-explanatory. That's like you think of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the dragons in that and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. That's more of the Chinese folklore dragons.
Yeah.
That's what Eastern comes from, and then Western would basically be European dragons. So Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, I should say. Skyrim.
More what you traditionally think of when you think of dragons.
Well, yeah, in the West at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but the Western Beast, which is what the How to Train Your Dragon ones are, is basically where dragons are pretty much just animals.
Yeah, that is one that you don't really see a whole lot of. So
because like a lot of them, you do have the dragons who talk. You think of like Smaug.
yeah,
You know, Western thinker, generally driven by greed.
hmm
That's just what the Western dragons in general. Even some archetypes with the Western beast, you do see them driven by
and
greed. But
typically also with the you're talking about with the Western thinkers, like you're in your mind you're seeing like the same kind of dragon, whereas like in How to Train Your Dragon, there's all types of variations of the dragons, not just one type of dragon that has scales and breathes fire and hoards gold. They're, like you said, they're animals. They all are individual. They all have different characteristics. There's different divisions amongst them all. Some are big, some are small. You have the Night Fury, which is what Toothless is. He's completely different than any of the other ones. And so it's like you have that kind of dynamic as opposed to them all just kind of being the same and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, I know you probably don't really know much about the dragon classifications and How to Train Your Dragon, do you?
Oh no, not at all.
Okay.
I can't even say I remember much from like I'm picking as much as I can from the past day or so ago when I watched the movie. I don't necessarily know any of that.
Mm. So in the movie, they actually mention more dragons than that are on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you picked up on that or not, but like they mentioned
When he's reading through the book.
yeah, they mentioned like the two title class dragons, the Scaldron and Thunderdrum, the Timberjack. Oh, what else?
Come on, David. Reach in deep into your mind.
I can't remember if he mentioned the Whispering Death or not, but I think that was around the same time.
I think he did.
But yeah,
I remember that from that.
Yeah, they do mention a couple that weren't on screen. Now, a lot of the dragons that are like in the universe came from the TV shows, and you probably didn't watch those, did you?
Not even a chance.
Yeah. So there were 2 on Cartoon Network, and then Netflix made one that's like 5 or 6 seasons.
Okay.
So with those, I did watch all those, but I'm kind of like later on, I kind of like, they introduced so many dragons. Some of them started to look more like Pokemon than dragons.
Yeah. Well, that is one thing you can kind of get close to, is they could have very much gone close to that route, a Pokemon-esque route.
Well, you think about like some Pokemon pretty much are dragons. In fact, I think there is a dragon type. I think there is a dragon type Pokemon.
Talk to Sarah about it.
I don't know Pokemon for anyone who listens. I don't. But
yeah, never followed Pokemon a whole lot.
Yeah.
Well, David, now we need to get into Pokemon so that we can talk about it.
Okay.
I don't have time.
So what do we need to watch the entire anime, all the movies? I think there's only one movie. Wait, there might be more. I don't know. And then play all the games.
You probably want to watch what you say. You might upset someone, but yeah, no. That's not only too much time; it's too much to remember.
And then also,
we haven't been indoctrinated for our whole lives, so I think we're at a loss here.
Yeah, it's probably going to be not that easy to get into.
Sounds like you're at a loss for words. So I do have a thing here. Again, this is a kids movie, so I can't critique it too much. However, let's just talk about how fast and why am I blanking on her name? Whatever the girl's name is.
Astrid.
How fast Astrid? Yeah, Astrid. Sorry, Office fans. Office fans unite. Astrid. But anyways, how fast Astrid went from "I hate you" to "Let's make out."
Yeah.
It's a kids movie. I can't critique it too much, but at the same time, I am.
Yeah. It is almost like a complete 180.
Yeah. But I mean, hey David, wouldn't you make out with the guy who showed you how to fly a dragon? I mean, come on. I probably need to be careful what I say.
Yeah, probably.
Not because of you. It's okay.
Yeah, I know what you meant. I knew what you meant. Okay.
Anyways, but I mean, you would, wouldn't we all? So, I mean, he did kind of like he kidnapped her. So, I mean, I would definitely 180 like that just to live. But
so you're saying it's Stockholm syndrome?
Probably. Hey, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Your thoughts on this, and it's just a thought experiment, and you have opinions, and I want to hear them. I don't necessarily have opinions, so at the beginning of the movie, or the main gist of the movie, at least what starts the movie, is that Hiccup hits the Night Fury, Toothless, and hurts his tail, his wing on his tail, so he can no longer fly. Well, Hiccup's way of fixing this is to make a contraption that allows him to ride Toothless, because the only way for the contraption to work is if Hiccup is riding him. Now, obviously, Toothless, being an animal, has some weariness to it, but eventually he comes around. Now, I'm not saying by the end of the movie that Toothless has any ill will towards Hiccup. Obviously, I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I know that you can correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end, when doesn't Toothless end up leaving Hiccup and all, he kind of does it hesitantly, but then he ends up doing it anyways, because he knows he needs to go and be with his, lead his dragons or whatever it is. I think that's how it ended.
Yeah.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but he, at the end of it all, Hiccup makes a design that allows Toothless to control it.
Yes.
Which means that there is a way in the first movie for him to do that. Do you think it's wrong of Hiccup, or do you think it was bad that Hiccup basically more or less kind of enslaved Toothless, because the only way that Toothless could basically survive was to let Hiccup, ride him, control him, and all that stuff?
So, okay. So there's actually a How to Train Your Dragon Christmas special that takes place like shortly after the first movie. Yeah. Where Hiccup actually does make a tail that Toothless can fly on his own with.
Okay.
Because I think it's been a while since I watched that, but I think the whole point of that Christmas special is it's dragon mating season, and all the dragons on Berk migrate to an island where for the dragon mating season, and they all come back. And Toothless is getting very ornery because he needs to fly off or whatever, even though there aren't any other Night Furies anyway. But Hiccup actually makes like I said, a tail that Toothless can fly on his own with. But at the end of it, Toothless actually destroys it. Because I think the way kind of like obviously Toothless can't talk, but I think the way that you're supposed to interpret it is like Toothless is like Toothless wants to be able to like have to fly with Hiccup. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. But see, back to the original movie where he does it, Toothless is obviously weary of Hiccup starting out, like most animals are of humans, and that rightly so. So, as far as that's concerned, because I will say, like, obviously at the end of the trilogy, Toothless goes off, and Hiccup then leaves Hiccup. So he does it reluctantly because the bond that has been created with Hiccup. And I'm not saying anything against like the bond that was created, but like I'm talking about like the beginning of it. Like obviously, there's probably you'd have to dive into the mind of Hiccup as to why he made a contraption for him to ride Toothless as opposed to making one for Toothless to fly by himself. Like what his intent was with it, But just more your thoughts on that. I mean, if your thoughts are just basically what you said, then that's fine. Like I'm not trying to bring morality or say anything like that into a kids movie over here. Like it drives the force of the the story. It drives the story. So I was just curious what your thoughts were.
I think. Oh, now then again, like this what I'm about to say is pretty much just my opinion, I guess. But I think
That's what I'm looking for.
I think it has partly to do of Hiccup was kind of protective. If that makes sense. Like, I guess Hiccup would have been afraid that if Toothless would have been able to fly, like he'd already been kind of exposed to humans or whatever, and probably would have ended up getting killed.
Fair enough. Sounds good to me. I did also mention to Sarah last night. I was like, I wonder if there's an underlining vegetarian/vegan message in this. We don't have to kill them. I know they didn't use them for food, but we don't have to kill them. We can make them more.
Mean, they still fish and raise sheep and stuff. So I don't know.
Well, I'm not saying the Vikings in the movie. I'm talking about the message of the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But it was more of a joke than anything else. That there can probably be those professional movie breaker downers or whatever you call them. They can dive into what the meaning of the movie was.
Let's just let
meanings.
Let's just let Matt Pat take care of that one.
Yeah, we'll let Matt Pat and like New Rock Stars and all them do their movie breakdowns.
Yeah.
What is it? Cinema Sins. They can all do all that stuff. We're just gonna talk about it.
Yeah.
Generically.
Yeah. So well, I've probably mentioned this to you before, but one thing that a lot of people don't realize about the movies is they were actually based on books. There are How to Train Your Dragon books.
I think you've told me that before, but that would not be something that I innately knew.
But the weird thing is, well, I guess not really weird, but like, the thing is, the books are completely different. Like, and it's not just like normal, like, book to movie adaptations. It's like very different. Like, some of the character names are still the same. I think the island's name is still Berk, and it's still like Vikings and Dragons, but like, other than that, a lot of this stuff is very different. Like,
when were the books written?
90s, I think. Hold up. Maybe early 2000s.
Okay, so not incredibly old from the time of the movie being made.
Okay, so more recent than I thought. So the first one came out in 99, and then they also kept writing them until 2013? No, 2015. Last one came out in 2015. So, yeah.
Wow. So he wrote them in.
So it would have been overlapping with the first movie. But they're, like I said, they're very different because in the books, most of the dragons are like the size of cats. So the whole thing of the the dragon riders or whatever isn't in the books.
Well, they do at least show some of that in the movies because, very much so, the dragons that interact at least with like Hiccup and all, they do tend to act like cats.
Temperament wise, yeah, but like
especially.
But I'm talking about like size. I'm talking about like size wise.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I was gonna mention the fact that that like Toothless in a lot of his interactions, he acts a lot like our cats. Like, just some of the stuff he does. He also kind of acts like a dog, so it's just kind of like, in a lot of ways, it's probably a little bit of a mix of both for the simple reason of, like, you know, cats and dogs are typical animals that humans own.
Yeah.
And so they interact with a lot of humans. Now, the dragon, like Hiccup starting out, he acts a lot like a cat because cats are typically more closed off. And then, like, as he goes on a little bit more and shows a little bit more emotion and is a little happier around Hiccup, like, he does end up acting a little bit more like a dog because, you know, dogs tend to be more trusting and just kind of, you know, love on their owners. So,
yeah,
they probably did model some of that after that aspect of it for the simple reason of, you know, you can kind of just see that in everyday life and how animals act.
Mm. Another thing that I wanted to mention too with the books versus the movies too is like the dragon at the end of the movie, which they don't even mention the name of the dragon in the name of that dragon in the movie, or the name of the like species of that dragon. The dragon at the end, the big one. No, they don't.
Doesn't what's his name, the fat kid? Doesn't he tell him what it is?
No, because this is the first time they've ever seen anything like it. But
he was saying some kind of stats, but it might have been something completely different.
No, like he was breaking it down when they saw the dragon, you know.
Okay.
But no, so the dragon at the end of the movie is called the Red Death. But it's interesting because in the books there's a dragon called the Green Death, which is where the inspiration came from for the Red Death. But I always thought it was kind of weird that they changed the name of the color. They didn't even really like you can even look at the dragon in the movie and tell it's like inspired by the description of the dragon from the books. Like because
they just changed.
Yeah, they just changed the name. Like
just changed one little aspect.
Like it's not an exact like pairing, but like you can tell like it looks like it was originally going to be the same dragon. But I just find it weird they changed it like that and not change the name.
Creative people are going to be creative, you know? And steal from other people. Just slightly change it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But,
I also find it kind of funny how, like, even the giant dragons like that still have, or still fit into the, dragon classifications that they have. So the Red Death is still a Stoker class, like, the Monster's Nightmare and stuff, you know, the dragon that sets itself on fire.
Yeah.
So that's also
different.
It's also a Stoker class dragon. Also, the Terrible Terror is a Stoker class dragon. So the little dragons from the movie.
One, right?
Or
is that the?
No, that's the little one. like the tiny one. The two-headed one is the hideous Ziffleback.
Ziffleback, okay. Yeah.
Which that's another thing too. Okay.
Pull up the names of them all, but obviously there's so many. So
they also changed the classifications of the dragons from the first to second movie, because originally the classifications were. Hold on, let's see if I remember all of them without looking them up. So there were the Stoker class dragons, which were like grouped together because of the I guess the fire and stuff, like how hot their fire, like big fire breathers, I guess. Then there were the Fear class dragons, which that's like the hideous Ziffleback, the two-headed dragon. Then there was the Sharp class, which was defined by like having like a bunch of like sharp spines and stuff on their bodies, so like that would be like the Deadly Natter, a Timberjack. There's more later on that get introduced. So then there's the Boulder class, so that would be like the Gronkle, Whispering Death, like like either burrowing dragons or dragons that have a lot to do with like rocks and stuff. Mystery class. I don't think there were any in the movie that would have fallen into the mystery class dragons. But and then there's these
a list of them all right here. So in a second, I might click on the mystery to see. But keep going.
So then there's also the Strike class dragons, which that's like Toothless, the Night Furies, or Strike class. But the thing that I'm talking about, they changed. They got rid of the Fear class dragons, and instead replaced it with, what is it, the Tracker class? Or something like that? I think it's Tracker.
Let's see, there was...
If you found a list, it's probably going to be the newer one, so it's probably going to have Tracker class dragons. And I think they moved, you got
Tracker. You got Tracker, yeah.
And I think they actually moved the Deadly Natter from Sharp to Tracker, which is kind of weird because all of them have like a emblem or something.
Deadly Natter here.
Yeah, all of them have like an emblem or something, like a symbol to represent the class. But the Fear class used to have the hideous Ziffleback, but then they got rid of the Fear class dragon, so the hideous Ziffleback is now a mystery class dragon. But
yeah, I just clicked on that one, and that was the first one.
But when they made the Tracker class, they used the old Fear class emblem, which had the hideous Ziffleback, as the emblem for the Tracker class, which the Ziffleback is not in the Tracker class. But then they moved the Natter from the Sharp class to the Tracker class, even though the emblem for the Sharp class is a Natter. To me, that just didn't make much sense.
Confusing.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't listening half the time, but it didn't make sense to that part of my brain either, so.
Okay. Yeah, I probably could go on about that kind of stuff for a while, but I know that
there's a dragon called the Nightlight.
Yeah, there's a lot of dragons.
Yeah, I know. There's way too many.
Now, one thing that I want to kind of mention, this is a little bit off topic, but so there's a guy I watch on YouTube who he still does some, but a couple years ago he did a lot of like How to Train Your Dragon videos and like video essays and stuff. So the first video that I found of his was he had a 2-part video essay about what happened to all the Night Furies. Okay, so these videos are probably the ones that blew up on his channel. But yeah, I find it kind of interesting that. So I watched both of those videos earlier today. In the second one, he like shows a screenshot of his YouTube page because he talks about like, how the first one blew up. And so I subscribed to him after after I found the first one. This was before he uploaded the second one. And
Hey,
apparently,
real quick, tell me what his page is, because I want to look this guy up and kind of watch through some of these.
Okay, his name is channel name is Hello Future Me.
Oh, I think
I think I've mentioned him to you. I think I mentioned him to you before, but he does like video essays and stuff. But the thing is, like I said, I watched these videos back again today. Like I said, he shows a picture of his YouTube page in the second one. So this was after I had subscribed to him. He had less than 600 subscribers when I subscribed to him. This was in 2016. Wow. This was 7 years ago. He has over 1 million subscribers now.
Yeah,
what?
I say he has about 1.202. 1.02.
Like
just right over 2 million or 1 million. I can't speak.
Also, I guess Tim, if you ever watch this video, yeah, I've been subscribed to you for that long.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like that blew my mind.
It's always cool to find like for you to find a YouTube channel that's really good, that's underrated and like not big at the time, and then like just watch them grow, you know?
Mm.
Like that's always so cool to do that. Which for anyone who wants to be a part of that, you know, come subscribe to our channels.
Yeah, subscribe to Down the Rabbit Trail on YouTube and Trailcast channel on YouTube. Check them out.
Yeah.
Alright, enough plugging your own stuff.
I gotta do it sometime. I mean, you know what? Advertising is the way to go. But anyways, yeah.
You know, I think we've pretty much run out of stuff to talk about for this.
Yeah, the thing is, and I was kind of fearing this a little bit when I was watching the movie that night. It's a great movie, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, go and watch it. And anyone who has seen it, go back and watch it. It's really good. But being that the story isn't that complex, and to know a lot about to find other things to talk about, you have to know a lot about the lore.
Mm.
It makes it extremely hard to talk about it. Now, obviously, you know, you could sit and talk and all about all that stuff. But this isn't necessarily a breakdown of How to Train Your Dragon lore. This is more just you know, us talking about the movie in a generic way. I don't think either one of us have the time to sit down and go frame by frame through movies to, you know, figure out all the different things and you know, all the different reading that you'd have to do to catch up on. Me more so than you probably, but just to find all the little nitty gritty details. But it is a good movie, but it's a kids movie, and it has you know, I mean, what's the runtime on it? Probably like an hour 40 or something like that. Maybe 2 hours.
Let's see, runtime 98 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, an hour 40. But yeah,
so, you know,
since we got a little
pretty
bit extra
basic
time,
plot. Boy
Hiccup
finds a dragon, and
introduce you, Wesley, and you listeners to a new segment.
I don't think you're allowed to do that.
Still there, Wesley?
All right, what's the new segment? Yeah, I'm still here.
Wesley.
For now.
Wesley?
I should still be here.
What up? Still there?
Should be.
I cannot hear you.
No idea. Can you hear me now?
Well,
you shouldn't have tried to introduce a new segment.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Hello.
There you go. I hear you now. Hold up. I don't
Can
know
you
what
hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now. I don't know what just happened. Okay.
See, I told you shouldn't have introduced a new segment.
But no. Like I said, I want to introduce you, Wesley, and you, listener, to a new segment
I don't know about this.
called
I
David
need to be
Rants.
debriefed beforehand.
Yeah, for those of y'all listening, I did not tell Wesley about this at all before we started, so yeah. But yeah, this new segment is called David Rants. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to that segment. Also, this transition is going to be very loud, maybe, so earbud warning for those of y'all listening. Alright, let's move on.
What is going on?
Alright, so Wesley. Did you know that they are making a live action How to Train Your Dragon?
I'm not surprised.
My only thing with this is, why? Why do we need any of these? Okay, listen, look. Why do we need any of these live action remakes? Because, in all reality, if you have a really good movie, a really good movie, the best that you can realistically get with a remake is just as good as the original. Because it makes absolutely no sense with this stuff. Because, like, okay, look, let's use Aladdin as an example. Aladdin, the live action remake, was, yeah, pretty good. But why would you want to watch a pretty good new movie when you can go watch an amazing classic? Makes absolutely no sense. And the whole thing with How to Train Your Dragon, too, is like, why do we need these? Who are these even for? If I want to watch How to Train Your Dragon, I'm gonna go watch the original. So I don't get why we need all these live-action remakes of movies. You know what? Actually, if people in Hollywood were smart, they would remake movies that flopped. Because, like I said, if you have a really good movie, the best that you can do with a remake is be just as good as the original. But if you have a bad movie that you remake, the only place you can go is up. So go remake some of these movies that people have never heard of. You can improve upon the ideas that you failed. Also, I have not heard you say anything in a moment. I don't know if you're just shocked.
I'm still here. Okay. No, I'm still here. I'm letting you rant, and then we'll introduce everyone and you to a new segment called Wesley Explains. But keep ranting. I'm interested.
If you have anything to interject here, you can.
Oh, I have thoughts, but I want to hear you get it all out.
Okay. But like I said, why do we need these? Okay, and also the whole thing of the Lion King and the Jungle Book. They're like, I guess the Jungle Book has the kid in it, but for the most part, it's not live action. They're just animated better. And again, there's not really a whole lot of improvement that you can make on the original. Like, maybe you can make the argument that a lot of these original movies, the animation's outdated, the animation looks old, or whatever. You can reanimate the movie. You can touch up the animation of the movie, make it look more modern, without having to completely remake the movie. And also the whole thing with the live action remakes don't make any sense. Because I think the most recent one that came out was The Little Mermaid. And I know there's a whole bunch of controversy with that. I'm not going to get into that. But again, who is it for? Who woke up one day and said, "You know what I really want? I really want to go watch Aladdin, but as live action. Like, I don't get it with any of these. And again, with How to Train Your Dragon, what are they? What were they thinking? Because like I said, the chances of you ruining it versus improving it are like, 1,000,000 to 1. Like, you're the chances of making it worse are so much greater than making a better movie. And so, okay, one thing that does give me a little bit of, I guess, hope for it is being directed by the same director who directed the original. But again, what's the point? And before I get too carried away, I'll let you go ahead and just give some interjection here.
Yeah. So, before I dive into all my thoughts with it, I do want to start with this. So, a while ago, I was listening to a podcast, and it was a Star Wars podcast talking about some stuff with George Lucas. And essentially, George Lucas's philosophy when it came to making movies was he would go out and make movies that he wanted to watch. If he watched a movie and was like, hey, that was pretty good, but you know what I'd really like to see? And he'd, think up something or whatever. And he made Star Wars, he made, So he would do that. There are very few creators like that nowadays. Because when it comes to Hollywood, it's not about what the consumer necessarily wants. It is to a certain extent, but the reason that they're making all these, or remaking all these older movies, is because they know they're going to make money off of it. They know people are going to go and watch it, good, bad, or indifferent. It's going to get seen because they strike up controversy with making the movie in the first place. So that's essentially free publicity. And then people are going to go watch it so that they can, have their own opinions on it and be like, oh, it wasn't as good, or oh, it was good. Well, if you're taking one of those two sides, you've seen the movie, and that, that means that they win basically in the end. They're making money off of it. They're not going to go out and choose an idea that showed that it failed. Obviously, I think I'm not saying I disagree with you on anything that you said. And I'm not saying that you don't understand, how Hollywood works. But obviously, Hollywood does not, for the most part, have any more original ideas. I don't think they have for a very long time. But now they're getting so desperate with ideas that not only are they just making the same or different movies with the same plot, just with different characters, they are now just taking movies that have already been made, already been successful, and be like, hey, how can we change it? Live action? All right, let's go for it. Is it dumb? Yes, it is. And is it gonna, are the movies necessarily that much better? No, they're not. But it's a cash grab. They're gonna make it because they can make money off of it, and they can make a lot of money off of it because it strikes controversy, which means that people are gonna watch it. I have only watched the live action Aladdin. I haven't taken the time, and I probably won't for a very long time at least, take the time to watch. I might have watched the live action Jungle Book, but I haven't watched the Lion King. I probably won't end up watching the Little Mermaid one. I may or may not watch the How to Train Your Dragon one. And it's like, you're right. When you have a movie that is already good, why risk making a version that might not be as good? Well, the reason is because starting off, it's going to make you a lot of money. And they don't care how it turns out in the long run, because they might make money off of that, but they're more concerned about it in the short term. If they make a lot of money off of it then they succeeded in their goal. And it might end up being pretty decent or good, which means that, they can make money off of it, for a longer period of time. But down to it, you're 100% right. there is no reason to remake movies. There's no reason to remake classics. And for the movies that did flop, obviously the live action remakes that they've been doing are not shot for shot remakes. Not everything is exactly the same. So they do take their own creative liberties. So if you take a movie that was a flop at one point in time, maybe kind of do some studying and figure out necessarily what it was that people just really didn't like about it, or maybe it wasn't even the movie was bad. Maybe it just didn't get the right publicity on it. Those are all aspects to it. So you just figure out what was wrong with the movie, remake it, and remake it better. And yes, I think that probably would help out with better movies in Hollywood. But no one's going to do that because, well, there's no guaranteed money in it. Obviously, there's no guaranteed money in a quote-unquote original idea either. But I don't know how many original ideas are in Hollywood anymore.
And see, you touched on something here too. That's another thing that really annoys me is, most movies nowadays are just cash grabs. They don't care. They'll pump a bunch of nostalgia or something into a movie and just want all the suckers out there to go and pay to watch the movie. And it annoys me a lot because I'm one of those suckers who's going to go watch that movie. Like, I might not like the idea of it, but I probably will watch this How to Train Your Dragon remake when it comes out.
Yeah. Well, that's all that Marvel is nowadays. Exactly. Essentially, is just cash grabs.
Yeah.
Marvel has gone down tremendously because of the fact that they are no longer concerned with content, quality. They are just concerned with putting out as much as they can because that earns them the most money.
Yeah, it does annoy me that no original story. But then, and then what I was touching on earlier with like remaking bad movies, like I think every movie has good elements to it, whether it's story or even just plot points, or maybe it's like a certain dialogue or whatever. Every movie has good points to it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these movies, I don't know if you've ever watched it, but it's one of the older Disney movies called Black Cauldron.
I've heard of it. I might have seen it, but it's not anything fresh in my mind.
That's a pretty good movie that no one really ever watched because I honestly don't know. Like it's based on it's based on some fantasy books, and I'm guessing it was the publicity around it wasn't really Disney didn't really push it that much, but it's a decent movie. Why not remake that? Tell it for in fact, I think they actually are. But that's actually one that I agree with. Remake a movie that maybe not necessarily was too bad, but maybe not necessarily got a lot of attention. Remake that for an audience that might appreciate it better. Because there's also the thing of, some movies might not have done well because of when they were made. Different audiences like different things. It's also
not every movie is just bad because of the story. There are other factors that factor into why a movie is bad. And that's what I'm saying. A director or producer can look into a movie and say, hey, I want to remake this. Here's where it went wrong. Let's not do it that way this time. Let's do better in this area, and they can make a good movie out of it.
Yeah. And it's, but then you also get the thing of
let's get a hashtag going.
But then you also get the thing of the most recent Ghostbusters sequel.
Yeah.
So that franchise, they tried the reboot thing. It didn't work. Then they made a sequel, which Ghostbusters Afterlife, I think is honestly pretty good. I liked the movie. Mm-hmm. I think it paid homage to the original two movies very well. But again, it's one of those movies that was literally just nostalgia. And not only that, it was literally the same plot as the original Ghostbusters movie. And not only the same plot, it was the same villain.
Wow.
That takes The Force Awakens to a whole other level. We'll get into that.
But That's not even how bad The Force Awakens is.
We'll get into that later on, but
Yeah.
yeah, the whole Star Wars sequel stuff, it definitely falls into all this stuff too. But yeah, like that's the thing. Now movies nowadays are just focusing on nostalgia and also like Fast 10 comes out later this month.
Mm-hmm.
That franchise is pretty much just being like the franchise is pretty much only alive because of the nostalgia that it has.
Well, it's because of that, and because, you know, like, essentially everything with that franchise is who's the next big actor, who's the next, like, most popular actor we can bring in to this movie to be the villain that we can cause to be the good guy next time, while also shoving in a lot of nostalgia along the way for those who have been with the franchise since the beginning, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we bring in the people who are liking what's on TV now? And how do we keep the ones in that are, you know, already here? Yeah, do we want to have a good story? Maybe, maybe not. We'll decide that later.
And we'll talk. We're going to talk more about the Fast and Furious, not next week, but week after next. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. But yeah, that's the whole thing. They, you know, like movies used to have like really cool ideas. Like you go back to the early MCU, and yeah, they're really like a lot of those movies were really good. Like Iron Man, Iron Man 2, I think are very underrated. The first Captain America is very underrated. The first Avengers movie is very underrated. Yes, Endgame was awesome, but again, even Endgame played a lot to nostalgia.
Yeah. Well, I think Marvel did extremely well with everything up until Infinity War. Well, up to Infinity War. And then after Infinity War, I think they started to teeter off. Like, obviously, yeah, with Endgame, they closed everything off. But I definitely think since Endgame, it's really just been like, yeah, we have a plan. And I know, obviously, like, COVID got in the way of a lot of stuff. But it's like, yeah, we have a plan, but, you know, you're going to see hints of it throughout different movies here and there. But, you know, like, it's not every single movie is going to be that great, you know? We're just going to kind of put them out there. And a lot of this might just be because of COVID, that they are like, oh, we're so far behind, we need to push out content so that, hey, by the time, you know, 2030 rolls around, we're on the same schedule we were planning on being on. And maybe their content will start getting back to better. But I really think that right now they're just overloading the system. Like, there are so many of the different movies and TV shows. Like, a lot of the TV shows I haven't watched yet. Like, more of the newer ones. Like, I've watched in the past, like, year. But it's because I have so many of them to keep up with. And then you only can watch them once. So if you don't catch it the first time, well, you snooze, you lose. You gotta, you know, watch a breakdown video or something, because you don't have enough time in the day to watch these things on repeat and get all the little Easter eggs that they have going on.
But it's kind of sad.
It just makes it overwhelming.
It's kind of sad with the MCU that the best thing that Marvel has made in the past, like, 2 or 3 years, the best things that they have made are Werewolf by Night and the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. Those aren't even movies or TV shows. Those are just like 90-minute specials. Like, you know, they're not.
I watch Werewolf by Night.
Werewolf by Night is very good. I think it was very well done.
I've heard it. I just need to watch it.
And I think what made those two very good is because they weren't a theatrical release or a TV show that had to have 6 episodes. They were able to come up with a story and tell the story without having to add filler or these other plot points that set something up or whatever. They didn't have to add all this stuff to it. They could just tell a compelling story. And I think that is, and that's another thing that I think the MCU is messing up on is, you know, they have a story. And then they add all this other stuff that's going to tie into stuff further on, and it takes away
Yeah.
from the story you have here.
I was about to say that they're losing their audience in doing that.
Mm. And like with the TV shows, like WandaVision was really good, Loki was good, but honestly, other than that, the TV shows really haven't been that good.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I wouldn't hate on the Falcon Winter Soldier as much as a lot of people would, but I will say it's not as good as you would have hoped a TV series like that could have been. You know, trying to think what other series. I think Moon Knight was pretty decent.
I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier would have made a better movie. I think they had a decent story. They had a decent story that they just stretched it out way too long. I think Hawkeye probably could have had could have made a pretty good. I think Hawkeye could have made a good movie. They had a good story that they stretched out way too long. I think Moon Knight would have made a better movie. They had a good story that they stretched out too long.
There were aspects that were a little slow with that.
Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, a lot of the stuff they can make into movies, and it'd be so much better. Same thing with the Star Wars TV shows. The Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi did not need to be TV shows. They could have made movies, even if they were straight to Disney Plus movies. They could have made movies with those two storylines, and they would have been a lot better.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. There is also a bunch of different aspects with the Book of Boba Fett and the way that they decided to take that character. But I definitely agree that it probably would have been better had it been a movie. And even if they did it something like similar to what you're talking about with Werewolf by Night or Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas Special, like if you do something similar to that, where it's maybe not like a full length movie, but you just make one thing for it, and you tell that story in that thing, it would make it a lot better. I'm not entirely sure. I've only watched the Book of Boba Fett once. I know there were aspects of it I didn't like. Nothing for me to really dive into right now because, it's been a while since I watched it. But, yeah, it probably still would have been better had it, been a movie.
Mm-hmm. And so like I said, like, there are still good ideas in Hollywood, but because they take some of these stuff and like try to stretch them out and add all this different stuff to try to for stuff in the future, because everything has to be a cinematic universe nowadays. It just
Well, don't hate on that too much, David. I don't know if we can ever get away from it.
Yeah, but like it seems like a lot of stuff they try to add all the stuff in and sacrifice the story in the process.
Yeah, that definitely is that way.
Which being a storyteller, that's in my mind, like being a storyteller, that should be the main thing you're going for, is to have a compelling story. All this other stuff should be second. And I know nowadays the whole money thing is the big driving force behind all this stuff. And so that's why a lot of times they may not necessarily make the best decision for the story, is because they're trying to make the decision that'll make them the most money.
But let's talk about this though. You're talking about being a storyteller. I know a while back we talked about Knives Out. And you could talk about Knives Out. You could talk about like the Murder on the Orient Express. Those book to movie adaptations. When you look at those, obviously the person who originally wrote the story is the one who has a creative idea, but there are elements throughout, and this goes back to, being more of a storyteller, and this is more of the short term too, but there are elements throughout the story while watching or reading it that you see, like there are hints here and there that can lead you to solving it, right? But they're not like sacrificing anything from the story to foreshadow those things. Whereas a lot of times, like you're saying, when it comes to a lot of things that they're trying to set up, like in Marvel or even in Star Wars, they sacrifice portions of the story to set something up that doesn't pay off for maybe a couple years.
Yeah, see, I think, like, what you mentioned with, which actually, Knives Out, I don't think was based on a book.
It wasn't? Okay.
Which I think is kind of interesting. But that's one thing you mentioned there, with a lot of mysteries and stuff, that they do add all this foreshadowing stuff. But you're right, yeah, the payoff is in the story. Like, it is foreshadowing, and the stuff that Marvel does is also foreshadowing, but the difference is the foreshadowing in movies like Knives Out move the plot along. It's too it's self-contained in that single story. The thing with
even if you look at early Marvel, their foreshadowing is a lot better than Marvel now, because a lot of their foreshadowing in early Marvel did stick to it, pushed the story forward. You may not understand all that's going on, but it wasn't like out of place. Now they've kind of lost their way with a lot of that.
It's just like with in the first Avengers movie. Yes, Thanos is in it, and Thanos sends Loki, and you might not, you don't necessarily get the payoff of the Thanos getting defeated, but Loki is the main villain.
Yeah,
like you see this big bad behind Loki, but Loki is still the main villain.
Yeah, not sacrificing the story, but also foreshadowing something that you won't see in said movie.
You won't see for another what's 6 years?
Avengers was 2012.
5 years.
Endgame was 2017. What was Endgame? Endgame was 2017.
No,
so about 5 years.
No, Endgame was 2019. Infinity War was 2018. So yeah, 6 years. But yeah.
Well, 12 to
19 would have been
19
would have been 7 years.
7 years, yeah.
Yeah. So from so for the big payoff of Thanos' defeat, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. So it's a, but then again, like every single Marvel movie before Infinity War and Endgame not foreshadowed, but were like the building blocks for the start of Infinity War, and then obviously then they beat him in the end. They weren't all about Thanos necessarily, but they were about the Infinity Stones and like kind of getting you to know all these things. And you didn't have the payoff in said movie, but it was the building blocks, moving the story along. And I don't think that they have anything like that right now in Marvel. And I think that might really be one of the biggest problems that they have. They had such a great key piece in their story, the Infinity Stones, that they could use as a storytelling device and as a motivator throughout their story, but now they don't have that. And I think, it makes it a lot harder to move that story along similarly. English is hard.
Like I said, that could just
I've been up too long.
That could just be like the tagline for the show, or the second tagline for the show. English is hard.
Yeah, it's been a long day, and I'm starting to slur my words. So, oof.
Yeah, well, we've been recording for an hour and 20 minutes, so I think we could start wrapping it up now.
Okay. Well, go ahead and get off the rest of your rants, because I don't know how long you've been holding this in, but it seems like you had some stuff to say, so I want to make sure you get it all out.
I think I'm good on this topic for now, but hey, if you want to hear more David Rants in the future, let us know. I'm sure I have something else to rant about. I have a lot of pent up anger.
Don't we all?
Okay,
all right, David, you ready to head to an outro, or?
Yeah, we can go ahead and head.
I'm not having hard, y'all.
I'm not having a stroke. Don't worry. Stop Googling signs for a stroke. I see you typing right there. Okay, anyway, yeah,
You see nothing.
let's head to an outro. Well, explorers, that's all time we have for today.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Let us know what you thought in the comments down below, or you can DM us on Instagram at DownTheRabbitTrailYT.
And be sure to join us next week on the Trailcast. I don't know. That's kind of off, but it was the best I could think of.